Good morning, good afternoon, dear participants, dear speakers. I welcome you to the online session of the WRF Conference 2025 on Justice and Inclusion, Environmental, Ethical, and Social Considerations. Please start, come on, welcome.
Thank you.
And the floor is yours, please.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for affording me this opportunity. I'm quite glad to get this chance to speak during the World Resources Forum of 2025. Of course, my presentation is on the role of artisanal small-scale miners in provision of that provision to environmental children's rights in Gwanda, which is a small district in Matabeleland, south of Zimbabwe. Yes, you can move to the next slide. So basically, as an introduction, just to give you a context into the area that I was studying. So Gwanda, like I said, is a small semi-rural district under Matabeleland South province in Zimbabwe. It is a very resource-rich area. A lot of minerals are found there, specifically gold. You can also find lithium and so forth and so on. And obviously, with such a place, you would expect there's a lot of bars and wires around artisanal and small-scale mining, which is also a very high source of income for families. Livelihoods are actually part of the reason why they venture into artisanal and small-scale mining. However, there are also valid reasons or evidence is shown that as much as it is a livelihood initiative that is quite good and is also contributing to a certain extent to the improvement of lives of human beings in that particular area. There are a lot of concerns around the environmental degradation that occurs. By its nature, artisanal small-scale mining, it is very environmentally degrading, and also the issues of artisanal small-scale mining also come with a lot of environmental effects to young children. You can move to the next slide as I just expand it a bit. So most of the artisanal small-scale mining that is happening there is actually linked to provision of livelihoods. Like I said, most of the small-scale miners, they are basically into the space for livelihoods, for upkeep. If you can check even on the statistics, you'll find out that Zimbabwe is one of the largest unemployment rates, which means people are venturing into alternative sources of livelihood. And of course, with the influx of climate change effects also being experienced globally, but more so in sub-Saharan Africa and specifically in Matabeleland South region, you will see that the predominant way of livelihoods, which was agriculture and livestock rearing, is being grossly affected. That essentially means people are being pulled into the artisanal small-scale mining as a way of enabling livelihoods and also ensuring that their families are well kept. It's got a very good contribution to community livelihoods. The economic growth is seen, even the infrastructure in that area has been developing over the past few years because of artisanal small-scale mining. However, the environmental impacts are also very glaring, and the effects that it has on children's environmental rights, they are also very much evident and prominent. For example, the children's right to health, you'll see that physiologically children are affected, even with issues to do with respiratory infections getting on the rise. If you interact with health professionals, they'll tell you that since the advent of artisanal small-scale mining, health issues around issues to do with respiratory infections have been on an incline. Education has been greatly affected. Obviously, in some cases, the schools are actually being affected by the artisanal small-scale mining. And in some cases, young children are actually being drawn into the artisanal small-scale mining because what they're seeing in the community is education doesn't pay anymore. People get educated, but they still get unemployed, and then they still end up venturing into artisanal small-scale mining. So you see that even the attendance rates are going down, especially for children who are above the age of 12. Most of them are dropping out and not getting into high school because of the pull factors of artisanal small-scale mining. Obviously, with artisanal small-scale mining and how invasive it is to the environment, we're speaking of water pollution, land pollution, air pollution, and those have effects on the environmental children's rights. So capturing the perspectives of miners was part of the objectives of this study, just to understand from the artisanal small-scale miners' perspective, what do they think about the livelihoods component and what do they think about the effects that it has on children and their environmental rights. Also, the community and the children themselves were part of the respondents to this study. You can move to the next slide. So this was a mixed method study. The approach was to have some quantitative data on the actual mining activities. What are the mining activities that are happening in terms of the artisanal small-scale mining? And then in terms of environmental health, a lot of quantitative statistics were derived from interactions also with the medical and health practitioners. Also, the educational department, also in terms of the statistics around children who have dropped out of school or children who have actually gone back to school because of the livelihoods and social economic improvements that come from artisanal small-scale mining. So we want to look at it at an angle to say it's not all bad, but then it has components that are bad. For example, you see that there are some children who are now going to school because their parents or guardians are venturing into artisanal small-scale mining, meaning to say they have economic muscle now to take children to school. Then we have other children who are dropping out of school because they are being pulled into the space. Then qualitatively, obviously, we had key informant interviews with artisanal small-scale miners. Take note that it's not easy to have one-on-one conversations with them, and also with families, obviously, and the children, focus group discussions just to ascertain some of the effects or the improvements that they've seen vis-a-vis artisanal small-scale mining in Gwanda. And then there was also stakeholder engagements, local authorities, obviously, in that space, especially in rural Zimbabwe. There's a lot of respect and authority that is given to local authorities, traditional leaders, and district leadership. And also the mining companies, as much as artisanal small-scale mining is not done under the watch of registered mining companies, but it was key to also just get an understanding from them. And lastly, the non-governmental organizations who are part and parcel of the advocates for environmental children's rights were also engaged in this study. You can move to the next slide. So part of my key findings from this study is artisanal small-scale mining is crucial for income. That is not disputed. There is evidence on the ground, even in the economy of the district. You can see the trade has improved a lot. There's a lot of infrastructural development, and a lot of new neighborhoods are being put up and set up with very decent structures, which is also a sign of the crucial economic value of artisanal small-scale mining. However, also comes from the findings the issue of water pollution, deforestation, soil erosion, these which directly impact children. So there's a lot of environmental harm that happens or that impacts children in that space because they are exposed also to pollutants. So artisanal small-scale mining uses some of the most archaic, old school type of equipment, which inevitably exposes the miners themselves and the children who sometimes take along with parents and guardians or who play around the area where artisanal small-scale mining is happening. They are being exposed to pollutants, and there is also limited access to clean water. The limitations are also structurally, of course, and inevitably due to the water pollution, and nutrition is being affected. Like I said, there's a cause and effect relationship between artisanal small-scale mining and climate change. And climate change also leads to venturing into artisanal small-scale mining, which then affects the process of agricultural activities, which has been the key livelihood initiative for people in that area. So nutrition is affected, children's food security is affected. Disruption of schooling, as I explained prior. And then also some of the findings that we got out of the study is there are diverse stakeholders who are having perspectives about challenges and solutions. These include the central government itself, departments within the Met department, the Environmental Management Agency, the teachers, the health professionals, and also the non-governmental organizations or civil society organizations. You can move to the next slide. So these are some of my, yes, there's a hand, I think, from Sonia. Unfortunately, she's muted.
One more minute, please. The
Okay, thank
last.
you. All right. So quantitatively, the study found that there's income increase. Data showed that over 70% of households in Rwanda rely on artisanal small-scale mining, and the environmental impacts were also quantitatively found to be affected with those statistics presented there. Child and health education impacts, obviously, is previously explained. You can move to the next slide. Then qualitatively, perceptions, on income and livelihoods, what the miners think, what the communities think, and describe as ASM in terms of being their only source of livelihood. Then they also expressed the concerns that they have around the unstable nature of this income and the risks involved. This is more on a socio-economic or socio-political aspect. Then environmental concerns were also raised by the community. You can move to the next slide. Here on these qualitative findings, you see each and every key stakeholder's perspective. The children's experiences were documented, and they also spoke on how this affects them, obviously, and inputs from key stakeholders. You can move, I think, maybe this could be my last slide. So implications of this and the recommendations given. So there is a need for a multi-pronged approach, that is inclusion of community-based environmental management. Here, the community was also proffering solutions around community monitoring of artisanal small-scale mining activities. They were also proffering solutions around promotion of sustainable mining practices, also including the issues of policy reforms, regulating some of the artisanal small-scale mining activities, giving them licenses, ensuring that they adhere to environmental impact assessments, or that they are capacitated at least to have an appreciation of what their activities do outside the economic value into the environmental space. And then also child-centered interventions in terms of health, education, and rights protection. So the goal ultimately is to balance the economic benefits of artisanal small-scale mining with environmental protection and children's rights. So this is basically my assertions from the study that I had. Thank you.
Very interesting. I'm sure there will be questions, and because of time constraints, I would like to invite the next speakers.
Okay.
Rita Mapusi from Zimbabwe to present ASM. And I would like to invite you, please, to remind you not to exceed the 8 minutes, because now we are a bit with time constraints. Thank you.
Okay, good day, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity for me to share my insights on the role of artisanal and small-scale mining in sustainable supply chains. My name is Tatenda. I work with the Zimbabwe Environmental Law Organization, and my reflection today are informed by both research and lived experiences in engaging with artisanal and small-scale miners across Zimbabwe and the broader African region. By the way, I was born and bred in an artisanal and small-scale mining community. So, in our transition to a low-carbon economy, the demand for critical minerals is skyrocketing, and minerals like lithium, copper, and cobalt that are essential for renewable technologies are also being extracted by artisanal small-scale miners. Artisanal small-scale mining has a potential to be a vital player in this narrative of the green energy transition, providing not just raw materials, but also livelihoods for millions. Unfortunately, the communities that that live in areas where these critical minerals are usually found in developing nations are not benefiting from the extraction that is happening from the critical minerals. Instead, they face issues of poverty and they also face challenges of informality when they also try to play a role or take part in the extraction of these critical minerals. But what we need to think about is if we build a green energy future on an exploited and informal mining sector, can we truly call it just or sustainable? Artisanal and small-scale mining is not a marginal player. It is a key player. It is a key supplier of global economy. It contributes around 20%, I think, of the gold that is produced. And in Zimbabwe, for example, it is contributing more than 60% of the gold deliveries that is happening. And it is also contributing a significant portion of green energy minerals. However, its role is also dual. It is a socio-economic anchor for many developing nations, serving as a primary source of income and a source of local trade, and often the only viable path out of poverty. So ignoring or trying to eradicate this sector is not a solution. The real question is, how do we bridge the gap between the current reality and the huge potential this sector has? The sector has a lot of barriers that are systematic and deeply entrenched. These include informality, which leaves miners vulnerable and outside the protection of the law. There's also lack of technology and data. That means that the miners are just digging on luck and are not using geology. There's also an opaque supply chain, ensuring that the value of their labor is also captured by the middlemen and not by them or their communities. For too long, formalization has been talked about in this sector. However, it has been associated with costly, complex certification processes that are disconnected from the reality on the ground. So there's need to redefine formalization so that it's just not licensing, but it also includes an ecosystem for support. It is about creating an enabling environment that provides legal protection, technical know-how, and financial access and fair markets for the artisanal and small-scale mining products. It is also about meeting the miners where they are building a ladder. A holistic framework for integrating ASM sustainability, I think it rests on 5 key pillars. The first one is on legal empowerment and ensuring that there's secure tenure. And the other one is technical support and access to technology, financial inclusion and fair markets, environmental stewardship to clean up their practices, and a green community development strategy. Over the years, we have seen attempts to respond through certification standards like the OECD due diligence, fair mind, craft, etc., etc. But on the ground, miners usually complain that these standards are too complex, too costly, or too disconnected from their realities. Without real incentives, without premium markets, certification risks becoming a box ticking exercise rather than a transformative approach or a transformative path. So, as a way of recommendation, there is need for government to simplify licensing, share geological data, and establishing ASM support units. The industry must stop avoiding the artisanal and small-scale mining sector, rather integrate it responsibly and investing in shared values. Civil society also has a role to play. in scaling up capacity building and to act as an independent watchdog. Development partners can also assist by aligning the funding with regional and national development visions and incentives that are sustainability linked to finance the sector. So as a way of concluding, ASM is not going away. It is permanent and a vital part of the global supply chain. The choice before us is simple now: exclusion or integration. But if we exclude artisanal and small-scale mining, the low carbon transition risk being built on exploitation and injustice. If we integrate and empower the artisanal and small-scale miners, we can ensure that the green transition is also a just transition. The future of sustainable supply chain depends on making that choice wisely. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for this very interesting presentation. I think it makes sense. We finalize the 3 presentations, and then we have quite some time for interesting questions and answers, which are arriving. So with this, I would like to invite Mark van Dorp to provide the next contribution. Thank you, Mark.
So thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be part of this forum, online forum. So I'm based at LSE, London School of Economics, and specifically at LSE IDEAS. LSE IDEAS is the foreign think tank of the London School of Economics, mostly focused on policy research, and going to talk about research that we are currently carrying out on social impact measurement by businesses, mostly focused on fragile settings using the human security methodology that I will go into more detail. And I'm doing this research with my colleagues Mary Martin and Peter de Wit. Please, I have control, I see. Yes. So our initiative is called the Business and Human Security Initiative, which was funded by the United Nations Trust Fund for Human Security. And we've been doing research on the intersection between business and investments and local communities, and how the human security approach could improve those interactions. And we came up with a methodology for creating business community partnerships. You see the final report put on the screen here. It's available on the LSE website, which basically goes into how human security as a concept, which has been around for many years, can become very useful as a tool for businesses to have a more holistic and integrated approach, which I will show you in the next slide. So if you compare human rights to human security, human security is a bit more holistic and let's say more focused on positive impacts as well, whereas human rights is more related to compliance and to minimizing risk. So why did we focus on human security as an approach for businesses? Like I said, it's more than just rights. It's really responsive to threats, and also looking at the business resilience. So how companies are actually able to play a positive role, so strengthening the community and strengthening their own business case. And the 3 main elements are that it's people-centered, so it's based on lived experiences of people and focused on durable solutions. It's context-specific, so instead of being a one-size-fits-all, it's really going into the specific context. I really like the examples that we just heard from Zimbabwe, because well, it's very much in line with how we would approach a certain industry in a certain location. The comprehensive nature, that's also what I liked about the previous presentations. I think one of my colleagues spoke about the multi-pillar approach. That's very much what we do with human security as well. And what we are proposing in our paper is actually a new method to measure social performance through this holistic approach using the human security methodology. And if you go a bit deeper into human security, there's 8 human security risks or dimensions that people are facing, and this is like a global concept that applies everywhere. So you have the personal dimension, economic, political, environmental, community, health, food, and technology. And this is like you could say, if one of these elements is missing, then human security cannot be fulfilled. So they all interrelate to each other. And what we are proposing is to link those 8 dimensions to the ESG risk and impact frameworks that exist, so that we can improve the engagement with local stakeholders, also in the impact measurement process, which is now, in our view, too much from a company perspective and too much top down, and we want to make it more bottom up. So the research questions that we are currently looking at is that we've developed this in a discussion paper which is called Food for Thought. So basically the key question is, how can businesses use these human security indicators as a benchmark to provide a more comprehensive, people-centered lens, and with specific focus on vulnerable groups, like in some cases this could be more focused on women or indigenous people or children. And then specifically we would look at, how is social impact measurement currently being done? We found that if you look at the ESG, environmental social governance indicators, the S is often the one that receives less attention. Environmental indicators are a bit more straightforward, right? You can measure emissions, you can measure pollution, but you cannot measure human rights violations so easily. And there's also a lot of confusion what social impact actually means. Is it about, the direct impact that companies have through their CSR programs, or is it about more the indirect impacts they have through their operations? Again, referring to the Zimbabwe example. Environmental pollution, of course, also has very, very direct social impacts, so they all relate to each other. So to finish, well, this is the methodology very quickly. So I don't think this deserves much attention. It's just, the way we want to approach is by literature review and a database research. I think that's the most, the element adding value. So what are companies actually using for social impact measurement? There's no real study being done so far to see how companies are actually approaching that. And I think that's really important to know because, as you probably also know that a lot of company reports, well, I would actually, from experience, I know that the shiny sustainability reports are very often not reflecting the reality on the ground. So we'll do a deep dive of case studies from different settings in Kenya, India, and Mexico. Those are countries that we've already been working in through our project, and we have a partner network there. And well, how this contributes to the World Resources Forum is by proposing an improved set of indicators within those ESG frameworks that are focused on local community benefits and that are based on data-driven, evidence-based solutions for social impact, with a special attention to the diversity of stakeholder participation. So are we really, including everyone, instead of cherry picking the ones that are, in the view of the company, that are actually good to have and that are promoting the company's image, so to speak. And with the end goal of to improve accountability and to create more shared value for society. So with that, I would like to end. Here are some links that you can consult that are giving more information about our research. And I would be very happy to answer any questions or any ideas about how to move forward with this research. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Tatenda. Thank you, Stas. So very interesting presentations and very well articulated without you talking to each other. That's very nice. And now I would like to start with the discussion part. And there are some questions raised in the Q&A section. Maybe let's start with them. For Stas, there is one.
Sorry, Sonia, I can no longer hear you.
Yeah, I had the same problem.
Oh, I thought maybe it's my connection.
No, I think she's dropped out right now, but for sure she'll be back soon.
Oh.
Sonia, can you hear us?
Maybe it's me.
Yes, yeah,
Apologies.
we didn't see you for some minutes, but glad to have you back.
No, it's sorry, my connection is today a bit weak. But I think the first question, since it's already raised in the question and answer section, you could also go back to this, and it's about innovative solutions for community-based, exactly, community-based. I have to open it again. Now, where is it? Answered. No, they are not there anymore. Well, solutions that you would recommend, propose from your experience in Zimbabwe for community-based engagement and other approaches. Stan, please go ahead. Hello,
Okay,
Stan?
so I'm just seeing the question from Robin Smith. He's saying, am I audible?
Yes, please go ahead.
Hello.
You hear it.
Okay. I think he was asking if there are any national incentives or are there any innovative community-based solutions for childcare and child education. Okay. So there are some innovative community-based solutions. For example, the community has what we call a community-based village environmental monitors. Each and every district and ward has what we call environmental monitors that are part of the community leadership structures. They are part of what we call the VIDCO, which is the Village Development Community. So that's an initiative that was developed to support the Environmental Management Agency. It also supports children in schools with establishment of what we call ecological school clubs. So some of those ecological school clubs act also as part of the community-based solutions. I think the question is two-pronged. So the innovative community-based solution that we have experienced in these districts, especially in rural communities, is the on indigenous knowledge systems. So this innovation is married to what we call contemporary environmental management laws. So there is a nexus of indigenous knowledge systems and scientific knowledge systems of environmental management. I think those are some of the innovations around community-based initiatives. And then I think there is another question which is saying innovative community-based solutions for child care and child education in ASM communities. So in terms of child care and child education, we have what we call the village health workers. Of course, the term village would suppose rural, but not necessarily. So it's basically community-based health workers. So the community-based health workers are actually more or less the designated child care professionals within the community at grassroots level. They work very closely with health centers within the community and within the district. So in terms of childcare, if there are any child rights related issues, the community health care workers then take it up. So they do even community-based educational campaigns. They do community capacitation around issues to do with child care and child education. So you'll find out that the community care workers, they also work closely with the schools, because sometimes the school snowballs some of the cases to them, and they also work with the school in terms of capacitating young children or school authorities in terms of referral pathways in case of child rights violations. So I would say those are some of the community initiatives that are there to take care of the children's health, maybe, and educational rights in the artisanal small-scale mining communities. I'm not sure if it suffices as the question, because I was trying to read on our chat.
It's just good, because you covered very good points, several points. So I think we got a good sense of your work and your proposal on this part. Now we will continue with a couple of questions for the Tenda, and these are related to, for example, certifications and traceability approaches. From your experience, what would need to be improved or changed in the current tools that exist on certifications and traceability tools in order for ASM to benefit more?
Okay, thank you so much. I think my first comment on that, I think that's an area that needs more research on. But what I think needs to be done is when these certification are being made, I know already there's some consultation that is done, but usually this consultation are just taking in maybe a small group of artisanal small-scale mining, and it's not really the sample space that is being used. Then you find that it might not be conclusive on the interventions that are then proposed. So there's need for a wide range of consultation, taking into consideration all the different working modalities the artisanal small-scale miners are working in, and also the minerals that are being mined, they differ the way they are being mined. So all those considerations needs to be considered when these certifications are being processes are being devised or are being designed. The other thing is, I think that there is need to really consider ensuring that there are tangible incentives when it comes to adhering to these certifications. For example, these artisanal small-scale miners, remember, they are venturing into this sector as a livelihood strategy. And mining is a business. What they want is to maximize their profits. So when these certification processes are being made, it then needs to end up ensuring that the profits of the miners are maximized. Because at the end of the day, the question that they ask you on the ground is, what do we benefit from doing this? We are already cutting corners and we're already making enough money. This is, certification and, this due diligence process comes with an extra cost. And these miners, they are actually trying to maximize on their cost. So it's very important to simplify them, and also ensuring that the tangible incentives when it comes now to adhering to these processes. Thank you.
Thank you, Tantenda. You touch upon simplification, consultation, clear benefits from this process. Very interesting. There is maybe a follow-up point. Are there any national incentives that would allow to work together with the larger activities, larger mining activities? And that are near their concessions where artisanal and small-scale mining activities are. So what would be the incentives for you to work together?
Okay, so as far as I know, right now, the large-scale miners who are actually working with, the few large-scale miners who are working with the small-scale miners, they are just doing it as a corporate social responsibility. And I haven't heard about government incentivizing this type of relationship. Of course, in some governments, when you are now performing very well in your corporate social responsibilities, then it might have an implication on the taxes that you then end up paying to government. But otherwise, I haven't heard of any proper incentives that has been put in place by government to our governments to ensure that there's more support that is coming from the large-scale miners or large-scale operators to the artisanal small-scale miners. But these large-scale miners, they are doing it mainly maybe to reduce conflict that will be there between them and the communities that they're working, because sometimes this artisanal small-scale mining is happening in the claims that are being owned by large-scale miners. So at the end of the day, they then maybe decide to just offer some extension service, some assistance in terms of extraction and maybe processing of those minerals so that they can at least buy back some of the minerals. I've come across some systems where the miners or the large-scale miners then buy some of the minerals that are being produced by the small-scale miners, and then they sell it in the formal market. So this is the kind of setup that they do, that sometimes they provide some form of extension service, and then they buy back the minerals and then sell it to formal markets.
Very good. So you are mentioning more the private sector approach that could incentivize, but also from the public sector, the national side, the national government side. So it's still lacking. So let's see. This evolution we can take up maybe with follow-up questions. This point, which is very important. Maybe Mark has also some contributions, and we have some points for you, Mark. First question is about data. Did you have any problem finding reliable data for the framework and the assessment that you introduced? Then there is the question on if you use community surveys for measuring the community's feelings. Feedback for this business center approach.
Yeah, thank you so much. So for the first question you're mentioning, indeed, data is a problem. Like I mentioned, social impact data are quite hard to find, are not something that companies collect on a structural basis. So we did also some research on, the S in ESG, the social components. And we found that a lot of companies are facing challenges due to the complexity of measuring social impact. And there's also an absence of standardized measures for social impact. So this is slowly improving because of the increased requirements, for instance, by the EU, the social taxonomy, and the CS-DDD. I don't know if you're familiar with that. The Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive is also providing additional requirements to companies to report on human rights and social issues. But well, that's all still on paper. So in practice, it's very hard to find concrete data on social impact. But a very good example, maybe in response to the next question, like the use of community surveys. Yes, very much. Usually companies, they have a, like I said, the top-down approach. So they rely mostly on what the company managers in the country are reporting. Very often these are like tick the box surveys. Are there any negative social impacts? Yes or no? Well, why would you tick yes if you don't want to be in trouble? So by using community surveys and community needs assessments, for instance, we were asked by a company in Kenya working in the tea sector to look at the community needs of the people that live around the tea plantations. And we used our human security methodology to basically to capture the true needs of the population, and then to see how the company could actually contribute to solving those needs. And that was a really interesting exercise, because for the company, it provided a lot of detailed pointers to where they could actually help people to improve their social situation. And the population also, the response we got, I was leading the field research in Kenya on this, and a lot of people were actually saying like, wow, this is the first time that the company is actually reaching out to us and asking us the right questions. So I think that's, to me, also one of the big lessons from my research, is that it starts with really showing interest and engaging in a genuine way with local communities, instead of paying lip service to those things. And that's not rocket science. It's really about having a good community engagement strategy, also talking to the right people, because it's also a challenge to find who is really representing the community, right? You can imagine that if you just, let's say, talk to government officials, that might be very different than talking to a community leader that has a much more, let's say, popular support in a region. So those are some of the issues that we found. And Sonja, if you allow me, I saw another question before that.
Yeah,
You sent,
incentives.
yes, shall I
Yeah.
also
Please, I
quickly?
wanted to ask that. Yeah.
Yeah, given the time, I'll just keep it short. Yes, I think the incentives are definitely there for companies, because, you know, as I said, the new EU regulations, but also other improved ESG frameworks, like the OECD guidelines and the UN guiding principles on business and human rights, they actually require companies to report on this and to measure the social impact. And the fact that they don't do it according to the standard is, I think something that, if you look at it from a business point of view, it's good for the business to have a good relationship with your communities, right? So in that sense, it's a win-win proposition. And yeah, in my experience, companies are increasingly looking at these social impacts, also because of social media. Like one small let's say what used to be like a local scandal now becomes, in a very short time, can become viral and become a worldwide scandal, affecting the company's market value as well. So from both sides, I think there's a strong incentive for companies to improve their social impact measurements.
Thank you. I think we can still get a couple of questions. I would like to continue and maybe go back to you, if depending on the questions that we receive. But I would like to raise a question to Star. And this is from me. It's very relevant, your work, and how you highlight and address the child aspects, impacts from
Yes.
the ESM. Could you maybe enlighten us or help us with a couple, one, two key indicators that you would like to recommend in our activities? Because sometimes we, in our work, in our projects, in our field work, we need to be concerned, address this aspect. Which would be the one, two, three key indicators that we cannot forget when assessing impacts on children?
All right. So I think part of the indicators that stand out, taking from also my work, maybe just a brief background. So I'm currently the lead focal person for Charities Homes Germany. I see you're squinting. Maybe my volume is not so good. Am I audible?
It gets correct cut. I mean, if you maybe speak slower, maybe.
Okay, I think something to do with my connection. But I was saying just a background of the work that I do, which will then lead to the maybe a few indicators that can help you. So I'm currently the lead focal person for Charities Homes Germany. It's an international child rights organization. So for the Africa region, I'm the lead on climate change and environment. And because TDH Germany is a child rights organization, most of our projects border around how do we advocate for children's environmental and climate change rights. So part of the indicators that I would say in your programming you could actually zero in on is the impact of environmental degradation and climate change on children's health itself. I think that's one of the key issues, the impact of environmental degradation and climate change to children's health rights. I would want to maybe split the rights for a specific reason. We could just say impacts to children's rights, but for the sake of coming up maybe with indicators, I would say zero it in onto health. Also check the impact of the same indicator to education and the impact of that also to socioeconomic status of the caregivers, that being the first indicator. So health, education, the economic status of caregivers. And then I'd say another indicator would be the level of child and youth engagement in decision making around issues to do with environment and climate change. We see that there's a high number of children who are now becoming climate change and environmental degradation agents. We have what we call the eco clubs here in Southern Africa, and we also have what we call environmental paralegals, which is young people, children and youths who are trained to advocate from a laws perspective or from a policy perspective for environmental rights. So I think one of the indicators will be the level of engagement and participation in decision making for young people and children in the spaces of environment and climate. And lastly, I would say coming up with tools or strategies to ensure that environmental impact assessments have considerations for children's rights. So we see that environmental impact assessments are just done maybe from a business point of view or from an environmental point of view, but we can put as an indicator advocacy around having environmental impact assessments that are child rights based. Yeah, I would say those are my key three indicators that you could venture into.
Yeah, thank you, Sta. Very interesting. So, Tatenda, from your side, would you like to provide key remarks that we would need to keep as takeaway from your intervention? Mm, we don't. Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, so I think the key remarks, like I already mentioned, that artisanal and small-scale mining is here to stay, and there's just need for us to come up with solutions on the challenges that are associated with artisanal and small-scale mining, so that it can be integrated in the main supply chain for the critical minerals. Yeah, and these solutions, they need to be informed by the operating context in these artisanal and small-scale miners are operating in, different stakeholders. And I think the most important thing is this should be a collaborative effort, and it should be based on incentivizing, maybe cleaning the mineral supply chain, or incentivizing adopting of responsible mining and mineral processing processes, rather than putting in measures or that try to stop their operation or something like that. I recommend a carrot, approach, whereby you incentivize compliance rather than, trying to force them, because at the end of the day, these artisanal small-scale miners, like I mentioned, most of them, they're not yet registered. So if you then put on a lot of barriers to their operation, they just end up putting all their produces in the illegal market. And this is exactly what we're trying to avoid. Thank you so much. I think
And
that would be
very
my
clear,
submission.
very clear. And maybe this is a good follow-up and final remarks as well from Mark. I would like to ask you how now you see the cooperation or the integration of ASM in the work now, or that you are going to design or you're preparing in future, and what would you recommend to your stakeholders? Cooperation
Right.
ASM with the businesses you were presenting.
Yeah, I think there's a very direct link indeed. If you look at supply chain responsibility, a lot of the minerals, as my colleagues explained, are used in global supply chains, right, for the energy transition and so on. So companies that are buying these minerals or that are using them, like Apple or Samsung, they have a responsibility to solve the issues that were presented today. And so I think that's where my presentation directly links into my colleagues, because the social impacts are often like devastating to people. So how I think there is really a much stronger need for more dialogue between ASM producers and the final buyers of these minerals. Instead of what you often see now is that companies, they say, well, we can only look into our supply chain up to the first or second tier, and the producer level, because these minerals often go through other countries and then they're being processed. So I think companies should really take the responsibility, and there are some good examples of how companies can do that, like the Good Electronics Network for the electronics sector. And so I think that's a challenge that we are all facing. Like, how can we bring all these stakeholders together to make sure that artisanal miners are also able to improve the situation? But it's not easy.
Great. Thank you. I think it was a very relevant, valuable discussion. I see a last comment from Robin, and maybe it's worth now reading it. Good conclusion, Mark. Very good points, proposals from Tatenda, from Sta. I personally will take up some of them directly because I work on indicators, I work on frameworks, my colleagues as well. They are closer to the ASM work and mining. So from several perspectives, it was very enriching. And you three mentioned the key highlights and remarks, so I would not add on that. I thank you for your participation, for your ideas, and with this, I would like to close the session.